Hello friends, how are you? Welcome to the Japan Study Center. Today we are going to see the chapter of history. And what is our topic today? Today we discussion most important chapter here, the kings, farmers and town, the real estate and economics. Class 12 cbse ncert chapter here. Here question is arrive here the important the main feature of the Mauryan administration here. You know that that's an important question. Main feature of Mauryan administrations here. A central administration, first of all, here, the king had a control over legislative, executive, and judiciary army and finance here. That's important point. The king had a control over legislatives, executives, and judiciary army and finance here. And the next year, the provisional administrations here. Provisional administration, the empire was divided into the many provinces here. That's important, the provisional administrations here. And the next, local government. The local government, there was the communities of 30 members of maintenance, rule and regulation, and the Patliputra here. You know that's important, 30 members to be maintained, rules and regulation in a Patliputra here. King used to run the administration with the help of 30 officials here. That's important, the king used to be run administration here, help of 30 officials here. Five major political centers in the empire here. Five major political centers in the empire. And law and order system set up. That's important, law and order system set up here. And organized to army as a communities with the 6 sub-communities for according to is a military activities here. And to spread to the Dhamma, appointment of Dhamma Mahamantra. That's important here, Dhamma Mahamantra here. An officer were appointed to manage their land, revenue, regulations and roads here. And the institution of spies was very strong and working effectively here. The spies is important here. And the next question arrive here, that's important here. Explain the system of land grants and trade from 600 BCE to 600 CE. You know that's an important question for the exam view here. Explain the system of land grant and trade here. The time period here 600 BCE to 600 CE. From the early century, the grant and land were recorded in the inscription. Some inscriptions were recorded in the copper plates. The records that have survived there give us the following fact here. You know that in this time, the inscriptions are recorded by the copper plate. That's an important point here. And the next point here, the land grants were given to the religious institution are to be Brahmans. The Brahmans were usually expanded from the playing land revenue and other due to the kings. There is the exempted therefrom pay of the revenue there other due to the king. The Brahman were often give to the right to be a collect this due from the local people. Know that Brahman is important, play the role here. The Brahman where is often give to be right to be collect this due from the local people here. Women were not supposed to the independent access resources like a land. You know that women were not supposed to be have independent access to the resources like a land. But artist craft women like Prabhavati Gupta is a daughter of Chandragupta II has access to the land. You know that's important. that a woman like Prabhavati Gupta is a daughter of Chandragupta II had such to his land. And all the people in the rural area had to be avail their new land of the village and pay him all the taxes. And some historians claim that land grants were indicatives of weakening and the political power. You know that some historians claim that land grants were indicatives of Vikings' political power, as a king were losing control over their some months, and sometime king tried to win allies by making a grant of land. The land grant provide to some insight into the relationship between the cultivator and the state. You know that that's an important point here. The first, there is a woman like a Prabhavati Gupta, daughter of Chandrasekhar, access to the land here. And the new land of village and pay him to the taxes also here. And sometime king tried to the win allies to the making grant of land. And the land grant to provide some insight into the relationship between the cultivator and the state here. The system of trade from 600 BCE to 600 C and explain in their flowing way here. The system of trade here, that's an important point. Land and river routes cross the subcontinent and extended in different direction from the 6th century BCE, and the ruler tried to control these routes by the offering protection for a price is here. You know that that's important. The 6th century is important. The ruler tried to the control these routes by the offering the protection for a price. And this different route were transferred by the pedlars who travel on a foot. This route as were transferred by the peddler who is traveled on the foot. But the merchant traveled with the caravans. The caravans of bullocks, cart, and pack animal. You know that's important. The peddlers is travel to the foot, but merchant travel with the caravans of bullock, charts, and pack animal. That's important. And there were a separates. Their ventures were risky but highly profitable. Ventures were risky but highly profitable here. The successful merchant is a designated a Mahanthavan in a Tamil and Sathis as a Satvahans is a Prakritics as very rich, you know that. That's important here. Successfully a merchant designed a Manthuavan in a Tamil and Sathis and Satvahans in a Prakritics were very rich here. A wide range of goods were carried from one place to another. Wide range of goods were carried from one place to another. And these were salt, grain, cloth, metal, oils, and finished product, stone, timber, and medicinal plant, and spice as a paper and textiles here. All this were transported across the Arabian Sea to the Mediterranean here. Know that next question arrive here. That's important. What does the Sok inscription tell about the Mauryas? You know that's important. A Sok inscription tell about the Mauryans. Describe the limitation of the inscriptional evidence here. Describe the limitation of the inscription evidence here. You know that Asok was the first ruler who is a inscribed his a message on the stone surface. That's important. Asok was the first ruler. There is the message on the stone surface, a natural rock and the polished pillar. Natural rock and the polished pillar is the source of message here. The major rock etiquette explained to the Mauryans administration, especially about the Asok. The major rock etiquette to explain to the Mauryan administration, especially about the Asok, and some of the important inscriptions are discussed below here. You know that's important. The name of Asok was not mentioned in the inscription. The name of the Asok was not mentioned in any inscription because instead there is a title why of the Namapiya. Devanamapiya is a beloved of the God, beloved of the God, and Piyadasi means patient to be behold, were mentioned. That's important. The name of the Soka was not mentioned in any inscription here, but Dev Annapiya, beloved of the God, and Piyadasi present to be behold, the mention on the inscription here. That's an important point here. Asoka is a condemned their desire for the fame of glory and stresses on the popularity of Dhamma. You know that's important. Asoka is a condemned their desire for the fame and glory here. He has stressed on the popularity of Dhamma. Dhamma is included a respect to award to the elder, a generosity of to award to the Brahmans and those who the renounces is a worldly life, and treating to the slave and the servant kindly and respect for religions and traditional other than one as oven. You know that Dhamma is a teaching that is the most important here. There is the respect to about to the elder, generosity to about the Brahmans, and he renounces the worldly life and treating the slave and servant kindly and respect for religions and traditional other one for all men. That's important. Here Dhamma here. The next here limitation of inscriptional evidence here. You know that's important. Limitation of inscriptional evidence here. First of all, a technical limitation. Sometimes letters are very faintly is engraved and thus the doubt arise from the inscription may be damaged or letter missing here. The technical limitation in this here, that is the damage and letter missing here. And second here, damage or missing letter. Sometimes important letter are damaged or missing in the inscription. It will make the work of the epigraphist a more difficulty here. The next here, lack of clarity. It is not a way easy to be sure about the exact meaning of the word used to the inscription, and some of which may be specific to a particular place or time. So scholars are constantly debating on the alternative way to the read the inscription. You know the lack of clarity here. The any word is not understanding here, but a scholar is content a debating alternative way to read inscriptions here. And undisputed to inscription here. Undisputed of inscription. Thousands of inscription has been to discover, but not all has been to be spared, published and translated here. This is not a published and translated here. Many inscriptions were destroyed, and what we have today as a probably is a fraction of it. That's important. And the next here, non-relevance of inscription here. Inscription were composed in the parishes of king and patrons is generally here. Not everything that economically and politically important was recorded in the inscription. Example, routine agriculture practice, the joys and sorrow of the common man were not mentioned in the inscription. Thus, it is difficult for the epigraphist to give the complete picture of society by relying on the inscription only. You know that is a non-relevance of inscription. That's important point. The next question arrive here. That's important. Explain the very the notions of kingship during the Kushana and Gupta Empire. That is an important question here. Explain the various of notions of kingship during to the Kushana and Gupta Empire. That's an important question. In the 1st century BC, Kushana ruled over to the vast kingdom extended from the Central Asia to the northwest India. That's important here. The 1st century here, the Kushans ruled the kingdom extended to Central Asia to North India. And this history has been reconstructed from the inscription and textuals as a traditions here. That's important. Inscription and textures here. The notion of kingships, there are wishes to the project are whereas the base evidences in there is a coins and sculpture. That's important. The coins and sculptures here for the evidence of here a verification of kingdom during to Kushana and Gupta Empire. The questions is the state of Kushan. The ruler were found to the Mathura and Afghanistan here. That is important. The Kushal status of the Kusan ruler were to found in the Mathuras and Afghanistan. According to the some historians, this tend to the indicated the Kusans through that himself like a god. That's important. There is historians this tend or indicate that is a Kushan saw that himself like a god. And several Kushan rulers assume the title Devputra. The titles here take here Devputra means are son of God. Whereas they are influenced by the Chinese leaders who call themselves of sons of heaven. That's an important point here. Several Kushan rulers assume the titles Devputra. Devputra means son of God. Another Chinese leader who is called himself sons of heaven. That's important here on this time. On the other hand, historians of Gupta Empire has been taken from to the literatures, coin and inscription including a prestigious here. Note that is important, the coin, inscription and literatures here. Passages were composed in the passage of King and Platon's in the journal. That's important. The famous Prayaga Prasastis composed the Harisen's, the court poet and Samudragupta. That's important. Harisen is the court poet of the Samudragupta here as a powerful document to know about the Gupta rulers. That's important. The famous Prayaga Prasastis composed the Harisen. Prayaga Prasastri is composed of here Harisen, the poet of a court of Samudragupta. The next question arrive here. Describe the various the sources used for the reconstructing the history of the Gupta rulers. That's an important question. Describe the various the sources here used for the reconstructing the history of the Gupta rulers. The Gupta rulers established a vast empire in 4 centuries. That's important. The Gupta rulers is a vast empire in the 4th century which is constructed from the various sources here. And these sources explain in the following way. Let's see first here. First as inscription. Inscription are the written engraved on the hard surface like a stone, metal, etc. That inscription is written here like a surface, stone, metals. That's important sources here. And these are generally composed in a precise of king in a particular and Platon is generally by the poets. That's important. That is generally composed by here poets on this period time. Let's see the example of Allahabad pillar inscription or Prayag of Parasastri, where is the composed of Sanskrit by the Harisen. The court poem of Samudragupta in the passage of him. That is important. Allahabad pillar inscriptions are Prayag's Prasastris were composed by the Sanskrit by the Harisen. There is a poet of Samudragupta is quote here. And coins are also is important source of reconstructing their history of the Gupta rulers. And there is include element like scripts, image and the contents of which they are found here. That's important. There is a inscription, image and context here. Some of the most spectacular gold coins were issued by the Gupta rulers. You know that's an important point. Some of the most spectacular gold coins were used by the Gupta rulers. And this coin of facilitated long distance transactions from which their expansion of trade and commerce was now. That's important. Literature historians attempt to draw a factual information from the composition of parasastia. Note that it is important. Literature historians attempt to draw factual information from the composition of parasastia. And those who composed this often treated them a work of poetry and other than to the account that were literature true. Note that's important. Those who compose this often treat them a work of poetry rather than account that were literature true. And this varied in the passage of king and patron in a general. And thus historians have to constantly assess their statement made in the inscription to the judge and whether there is a true recital or exaggerations. That's important. And precisely they contribute to the prominently is reconstructing the histories of Gupta rulers. Example, Prayag Prasastis was composed in a Sanskrit from Samudgupta time. That's important example of here. There is a example of Gupta ruler Prayaga Prasastis was composed in a Sanskrit for the Samudgupta. Next question arrives as important. What do you mean by the numismatics here? You know that what do you mean by the numismatics here? How has the study of the coin helped their numismatics to be destruction as a possible commercially network here? You know that's important questions here. What do you mean by the numismatics here? That's important. Numismatics is a study of coin including the visual element such as a script and image and methodological analysis and the context in which they has been to found. The study of coin has been helped to the numismatics to be instruct there is a possible commercially network in flowing way. That's important point here. Let's see next by next a point here. First point here, introductions of coinage to trade facilitation here. You know that's an important point here. To some extent, exchange were facilitated by introduction of coinage here. The coinage is the important exchange in this time. A wide range of goods like a salt, grain, cloth, metal, oils and finish, products, stone, timber, medicinally plant, etc. were carried from one place to another. That's important here. And this continually required some kind of currency for exchange and hence this lead to be a development of coinage and across the trading culture. That's important here, introductions of coin as for a trade facilitations here. That's important point. And the next year, the next excavation of punch mark coins across the subcontinent. You know that's an important point. Excavations of punch mark coins across the subcontinent here. A punch mark coin made of silver and copper. Punch mark coin made of silver and copper. 6th century BCE onward. Where amongst their earliest they are minted and used. That's important here. A punch mark coin made of silver and copper. And there is amongst their earliest to be mentioned to be used. And this hand has been to be recovered for excavations at a number of sites throughout their subcontinents here. That's important also point. And numismatics has studies and this and other coin to reconstruct a possible commercial network here. numismatics as my study has this and the other coins stick reconstructed possible and commercial network here. The next year, kings, merchants, and banker as a issuing of authority. You know that is important. Kings, merchant, and bankers as the losing authorities. Attempt made in the identify the symbol on punch mark coin with their specific rulings that census here, including the Mauryas as a suggest that these were issued by the king. That's important. It's also like that is a merchant, banker, and town people issue some this coin. And the next year, similarity of Kushana coin with those of Greek and Persians here. You know that the similarity is important here. The first gold coin were issued in the 1st century BC by their Kushana. This is an important question for the MCQ here. A first coin issued by there is a 1st century BC or Kushans here. Kushans is a first gold coin issue here. And this were actually identical to weight with those issued by the contemporary Roman Empire and Parthian ruler of Iran has been to found that several cities in the northern India and Central Asia here. And the next year, close connection with the Roman Empire. That's an important point. Close connections with the Roman Empire here. The spirit use of gold coin indicate that the numerous value of the transaction that were taking place is here. And beside the horse, the Romans coins has been to found from the archaeological sites of South India. It is obvious that a network of trade were not confined within the political boundaries here. And South India was not a part of a Roman Empire, but there were is a does connection through the trade. That's important, a close connection with the Roman Empire for here importance of the gold coin. The next question arrive here. How do the modern history explain the development and growth of Magad power? Explain a very, you know that's important. The modern historian explain the development and growth of Magad power. That's important here. Between the 6th and 4th century BCE, Magad is a present day of Bihar. Magad, present day is Bihar, but 6th and 4th century is called Magad. Magad become there is a most powerful Mahajanpad. The Magad is the most powerful on 6th and 4th century. There are Mahajanpad and present day of the Bihar. Modern historians explain the development of variety of ways here. The variety is an important way. The Magad was origins where agriculture was especially of productivity. You know that Magad was regions where agriculture was especially productivity here. Besides the iron mines in the present Jharkhand, the iron mines here present Jharkhand were accessible and provide to resources for the tools and weapon. The iron mines is important and present here Magad. The Magad is first of all the Bihar is a one state, but sometimes there is the converted Jharkhand also. Jharkhand a part of Bihar. And there is the same time the 6th and 4th century the Magad is Bihar. You know that iron mine present day is Jharkhand where assembled there is a provide source for tools and weapon. Elephants are an important component of army were found in a forest in the region. Elephant is the most important here for army found a forest in the region. Also the Ganga and tributaries is to provide a mean of cheap and convent a communication. That's important here. The Ganga is important. However, the early Buddhist and Jain writer who wrote about their Magad attributed its power to be policies of individual. Whereas is ambitious is the king of worms is a Bimbusars and Ajasatru and Mahapadma Nanda are the best now and their minister who helped them implement their policy. You know that in this time the king of Bimbasar and Ajasatru and Mahapadam Nand. There is the most important ministries help to implement their policy. The two capital is a Rajgiri or is a Rajgir and Patliputra means Patna of the Magad has their own advantage here. Rajgarh was the first file as a settlement localized amongst the hills, thus was not be easily captured, and Patliputra was easily communicable through the Ganga and its tributaries. That's an important point here. The two capital, Rajgir and the Rajgir is the Patliputra means Patna is the Magad has their own advantage. That's important questions here. The next question is arrive is the most important here. Critical examine the limitation of the inscriptional evidence in the understanding political and economical history of India. You know that that's an important question for this exam view and many times come to the exam here. The critical examine to the limitation of the inscriptional evidence in the understanding political and economical history of India. Inscription are important source now history, but there are a contain limitation of inscription. There is a following here. First of all, here several thousand of inscription were discovered, but not all them were disappear is translated. You know that thousand of inscription, but not a translated here. That is the problem here. And generally inscription were composed in a passage of king and patrons. Example, Prayaga Prasastri was the composed in a Sanskrit by the Harisen. The court of poet Samudra Gupta. That's important here and the same point for the all questions. From this inscription, we know about the city's administrative capability of the king. Samudra Gupta, who was described as equal to different dynasties here. That's important. From the inscription, we know that about the generous administrative capability of the king Samudra Gupta, who was described as equal to different dynasties here. The context of the inscription variably projected there is a perspective of the person who is commissioned it. And but it's not recorded that what we are consider political and economically significant fact of that period. No, that is important. Not recorded what we are consider a political and economical significant fact that period. For example, routine agriculture practice, the joy and sorrow of the common people were not mentioned in this inscription. That's an important point here. The routine agriculture practice, the joy and sorrow, common man and common people were not mentioned in this inscription. That's an important point here. History is not only to histories of kings, it includes different social group and even is a marginalized to the section of our society. You know that's important. History is not only to histories and the of king. There is include a different social groups even to the marginalized section of our society. From mid or 12th century, historians become more interested in the political and economical change of society. They in which a different social and group emerge. That's important 12th century here. And this lead to the fresh investigation of all sources and this is a respect inscription has its own limitation to the interrupt political and economical history of India. That's an important point here. You know that next question arrive here. Historians has a use to the variety of source to be reconstruct the history of the Mauryan Empire. That's important questions here. Historians have used to the variety of sources to be reconstruct the history of the Mauryan Empire. Historian has in the use of variety of sources to reconstructed their history of Mauryan Empire, and this very is important. Things are found in the archaeological Excavations and especially sculptures are regarded as the important source here. Contemporary work like a written of Magastans and Arthashastra by there is a Chanakya are important source of regarding that period. You know that is important. The contemporary is a work like a written of Magasthan and Arthashastra by the Chanakya are the important source of regarding that period here. The Mauryas were also is a mention in the later Buddhist, Jain and Puranics and the Sanskrit literature. You know that is important. The Mauryas were to also is a mention in the later Buddhist, Jain, Puranics and Sanskrit literatures here. Moreover, the inscriptions of Asoka on the rock and a pillar are regarded as their most valuable sources here. That's important here. The inscription of Asoka as a rock or pillar are regarded as their most valuable sources here. Next question arrive here. The role played by the coin in the decipherment of Khroshti script. You know that that's an important question for the exam view. The role played by the coin in the decipherment of Khroshti script here. The role of play by the coin in the decipherment of Khroshti script was there is an analysis here. The analysis of the Indo-Greek coin, the coin of Indo-Greek kings who is ruled over the northern western part of the subcontinent in a second century BCE. That's important here. The coin of Indo-Greek kings who ruled over to the northwestern part of subcontinent in a second century BCE here, and were analyzed by the epigraphist here. And comparisons with the Greek script, the Indo-Greek coin contain the name of king and written in the Greek and Khroshti script. That's important point here. Khroshti script was compared with the Greek one. You know that that's important. The Khroshti script was compared with the Greek one here. The European scholar who is could be read a Greek compare it with the Khroshti. You know that that's important point here. The European scholar who could read a Greek compare with the Khroshti. There were a few similarity. Example, letter A was used the both script for the written names such as a Apollodox here. You know that's important. His comparative similarity here. So A was used to the both script. And James of Princeps identified the language of Khroshti as a Prakritic. Khroshti as a Prakritic. After that, it become possible to read a longer inscriptions easily. That's important here. The James is a precepts of identify their language of Khroshti as a Prakritic, and after that is become a possible to read a longer inscription easily. The next question arrive here. Explain the agriculture practice flow by the cultivator to increase of productivity from to C of 600 BCE to the 600 CE. You know that that's important questions here. Explain the agriculture practice followed by the cultivator to increase productivity from to the 600 BCE to 600 CE. That's an important question for the exam view here. Agriculture practice were transferred from to 6th century BCE. The agriculture practice were transformed from 6th century BC onward because of increasing burden of taxes imposed by state. You know that's important. The increasing of burden of taxes imposed by the state. The kings demanded a considerable taxes from the subject from 6th century BC onward. No, that is important. The king demanded a considerable taxes from the subject from 6th century BC onward. In order to fulfill this demand from a more taxes, the farmers started to the finding new means to increase the production of their crops. That's important point here. The taxes for the farmers started to finding new means to increase the production of their crops. This new means were here, that's important. Shift to about to the plug agriculture practice were to significantly transferred by the shift to plug agriculture, and which spread in the fertile alluvial rivers valleys such as those of the Ganga and the Kaveri. That's important here, new means here. And use of iron tapered is a plug share in the area of high rainfall. The use of iron taper is a plug share turn their alluvial soil into be highly fertile ground. And the next use of transplantation paddy or transplantation techniques was used in which there are seeds were first broadcast then to the spring where to the transplanted in a water logged field. Know that that's important 3 points here. The next year, this ensure a high ratio of survival of springs and the higher yards and the dramatically increase the production of paddy crop. That's important, and though this process require high degree of manual labor here. And use of irrigation to increasing of productivity. Irrigation was another strategy to increase the agriculture production here. The irrigation was done through the wells as a tank, and sometimes there a canal were used. Our communities was well as individual organized the construction of irrigation works here. The process of construction of irrigation was often recorded in the inscription by the kings. That's important. The use of such technologies led to be an increase in agricultural production, which ultimately lead to a growing differentiation amongst people engaged in agriculture. The large landholder and villager herdsmen emerged as a powerful figure who exercised control over the cultivator or agriculture laborers here. And thus there was the remarkable change in the field of agriculture from 6th century BC here. This topic was till this. We will be do their next topic in the next part. If you like it, then please like, share, subscribe and share the video as much as possible. Do not think, subscribe and save in your mobile.